That's also the same thing as saying vertical change over horizontal change. And you remember me putting these triangles yesterday, and I did it just now. It means change because I don't want to write it all out. So we're finding slope and the rate of change again today. This time between 2 points, but not on a graph. So if you're given 2 points, we use this slope formula. It says m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. All that's saying is subtract the y values and find the change between them. Subtract the x values and find the change between them. So this is really the exact same thing as finding the change in y over the change in x. Because if you subtract, you're finding the difference, and difference is how much it's changing. So it's the same thing. As I do this first example, even if something feels unnecessary for you to write down, write it down, please. Because I taught honors algebra 1, taught regular algebra 1. It doesn't matter the student. This always trips us up. Negatives, we're using this formula in and of itself. It's not super difficult, but it's like little stuff that'll get you messed up. So write down what I write down, even if it feels like, oh, I got this. I don't need to write it down. Please, write it down. I always want you to start by writing down the formula. So we're going to start by writing down that m stands for slope, equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Write it down. Even if you feel like, I don't need to write down that formula, you're wrong. Write it down. So then we label our points. This is the first point, 2, negative 3. The second point is 5, negative 4. So we label x1, y1. All that means is x and y values from the first point. That's what the little 1 means. And then x2, y2, x and y values from the second point. We can go ahead and draw the fraction bar again. And I would go ahead and put those subtraction signs right now. Because here's what I see over and over. It happened last hour. It happens every year in all my classes. You got the subtraction right here, and then you have a negative. And so students think, oh, well, I'm subtracting a negative, so I don't really need to put minus a negative because I already have a negative sign. Wrong. You do need to put minus a negative. I should see 2 negatives if you're subtracting a negative. So just beware. Change colors. So let's go ahead and we just put in the numbers now. Guys, what's y2? Negative 4. So we write it down. What is, so it goes y2 because it's change in y over change in x. And then y1 is negative 3. So this is what I'm talking about. Minus negative 3. You have to have both the subtraction and the negative sign. Don't just think you're cool because you got one of them. No. Okay, x2 is 5. x1 is 2. Okay. So now we just simplify and subtract. If I have subtracting a negative, it's really the same thing as adding. Because if I take your debt away of $3, it's like I'm giving you money. So we can change that to plus signs. And so I get negative 4 plus 3 is negative 1. And 5 minus 2 is 3. You can use your number line on your desk. Feel shaky? That's fine. That's as far as it simplifies, so you're done. M equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Change in y over change in x. And you label your points. First point, y1, x1, y1. Second point, x2, y2. And then you just plug it in. But before you do that, I would draw the fraction bar and I would put the subtraction signs. That way you remember, even if you have a negative, you got to keep that subtraction. It does not replace the negative sign. Jessica, what's my y2?
3, negative 3.
Camden, what's my y1? 5. Alexis Meyer, what's my x2? And Lexi, what's my x1?
4.
Okay. Simplify. You're at -3 and you go down 5 more. You are where? -8. Thank you for not saying 2. And then 4 minus 4 is? Are we allowed to divide by 0? Look at the sign over there. No, you are not. What do we say? Undefined is what you say. Yeah, ask yourself, what would slope dude say? WWSDS. Okay. So we're not going to use the formula for this one. Instead, we're going to make a table. This might be a lot easier for you. And if so, then I think that's great because they're both mathematically correct. So I'm going to make a little table. I'm going to label my little table X and Y. And I'm just going to put my points in the table. So it'll be -1, 2, -6, 2. Guys, how is it changing, adding or subtracting from 2 to 2? So what do we say? Plus 0. And from -1 to -6, it goes -5. So this is the same thing as we did yesterday. So then you write it as change in y over change in x. And that would be 0 divided by -5, which is 0. It is okay to do 0 divided by a number. You get 0. I will say I need you to know how to do both. Like I need you to know how to use the formula. But on a regular basis, if you'd rather use a table, if that's going to help you make fewer mistakes, then that's what I want you to do. That's fine with me. Can you please, at the top of this page, since it's not written on this page for you, can you write down the slope formula because you're going to need it? You can't use a table for this part. I'm sorry. All right. We're going to start this problem the same way. Here's the deal. You have 2 points, but if you notice, one of the points is incomplete and you still have a variable. And then you're given the slope. So we know that the slope is 4/5. You have to find the missing number. That's what you're doing. So start it the same way. Let's label the x's and the y's, x1, y1, x2, y2. Oops, 2. And start it the same way with the fraction and then minus signs. Andrew, what's my y2? Noah, what's my y1? My y1. 8. Desiree, what's my x2? Yep. Maddie, what's my x1? So now let's go ahead and simplify that. Let's make it prettier, right? What is 4 minus 8? Not 4. -4. And then, as we talked about, if you have subtracting a negative, it's the same thing as adding. So the bottom part really is just x plus 2. And that is equal to the slope, which you were given already. The slope is 4/5. So you have to set this equal to 4/5 equals 4/5. This is a proportion, is what we call it. And so you have to solve it by cross multiplication. So ignore this. This doesn't matter anymore. We're done with that. What we care about is the part that's boxed in yellow. And we're going to cross multiply and solve. So what is -4 times 5? Okay? Now this part is a little weird. So you got 4 times x plus 2. You got to write x plus 2 in parentheses, because you're going to have to distribute. So 4 times the quantity x plus 2, and distribute. Right, so you got -20 equals 4x plus 8. And could you go ahead and solve? Add or subtract, then multiply or divide. We're going to skip this next one. Three main things. The first is that students do change in they do change in x over change in y instead of, what should they say? Y over x. Ugh, this drives me crazy. It makes me want to cry. Don't do that to me, please. So that's the first one. Please don't make that mistake. If you do, I'll forgive you. But I might be a little salty about it. And then, whenever we're doing y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, I already kind of mentioned this one. We forget or drop the negative sign if there's a negative number. So whenever you should be subtracting a negative, sometimes they just subtract a positive, which is why I made you put the subtraction signs first. And then lastly, not writing the slope as a negative when it should be. That applies to a graph, that applies to a table, that applies to 2 points. I say it all the time. We got the right numbers, but the negative sign all of a sudden disappears. Or we forget to look at the graph and notice it's nice negative, and so we don't add that negative sign. Those are the 3 things I see.